Hello students, this is your English lesson. In this lesson we are going to read a story, Haggard's Crossing, unit number 13 from Oxford Reading Circle 5. Let's start the reading. Haggard's Crossing in the valley is a cold and unfriendly place. Usually the point where two or more roads come together is one where weary travelers stop to rest, very tired. Somebody, perhaps some traveler with whom one might exchange a friendly word, might come by. But Haggard's Crossing in the valley was not a place where people stopped for long. Travelers hastened on their way and avoided the crossroads. There were other routes to the village at the head of the valley, so this one was seldom used. The valley was deep and dark, and the river at its base often rose above its banks and flooded the road running alongside. A cold, slightly wet, a cold, damp mist masked the view in the valley. But it was not merely the geography and climate of the place that kept people away. There was another reason why people feared it. The locals said that some years before a man had been robbed and killed here. The dead man's restless spirit roamed the valley in search of the person who had taken his life. Won't move about aimlessly. It was this very spirit that was blamed for causing further accidents, which occurred there from time to time. Jack Drummond lived on his own in the little village of Sindleford, at the head of the valley. He had spent his whole life there. He could remember the times when, as a child, he had sat on top of a cartload of turnips or potatoes and travelled with his father to the city along this very road when the sun had shone and he had not a care in the world, when he had played his banjo and sung at the top of his voice, and when he had laughed. What happy times those were! But that was before the incident, and before the cold mist began to shroud the valley. Jack was now getting on in years. Although he was a loner and kept to himself, he was an excellent banjo player. The villagers always sent for him, ordered, instructed to come to one, sent for him to liven up an occasion. Jack was always ready to play an instrument, and tap out a beat all night long. In fact, he was so much in demand that whenever there was a celebration in the village of Horsburgh at the top of the valley, he was summoned to perform. Of course, Jack always left in good time. He always travelled by the longer route to Horsburgh, across the top of the hills. He was not superstitious or fearful, but he stayed away from the crossroads. And at the end of a musical evening, Jack always made sure he got a lift back home on somebody's cart. The winter arrived. The evening became darker and gloomier ill-lit. In the valley, the mist was thicker and seemed more damp than usual. The moisture got into one's throat and nostrils, and it was no surprise that half the village came down with the flu. But Jack seemed to be in good health. The damp had not affected his voice, nor had it chilled his bones. One day Jack was asked by his old friends Martin and Anne Robson to play his banjo at a celebration in Horsburgh. The Robsons were throwing a surprise party for their daughter, Samantha, and Jack was asked to play. It won't be late, will it? Asked Jack when the invitation came. No, he was assured. The road is not safe and Sindleford is quite some way. said Jack. Yes, that's true enough, came the reply. But Charlie Willing and his family are coming over, and I expect they will be riding in their cart, so you can get a lift back with them. Ugh, Jack was relieved. The Willings lived just down the road from him. He would be quite safe with them. A big crowd turned up for the Robins party. The house was too small, so the guests gathered in the barn. Long tables had been arranged along one side for the food and the drinks. There were sacks and drums, chairs and benches along the opposite length of the barn. The center was kept clear so that the merrymakers could dance and talk. In one corner sat the musicians, Lack with his banjo, John with his accordion, a box-shaped musical instrument, the partridge, a small-tailed game bird, twins with their fiddles, and others who joined in from time to time. The music played on, food and drink was taken in vast quantities. Everyone was having fun. The dancing became more vigorous, strong, and the volume and rhythm of the music increased. Jack strummed with all his might, play an instrument by sweeping the thumb. He had never known an evening quite like this. His long grey hair hung over his eyes, and the sweat flow in a small stream. His cheeks were fiery red. The tips of his fingers felt like smoldering, burning slowly with smoke. Embers, small piece of burning. But Jack played. He strummed on and on and on. It was after midnight when Jack rose and looked anxiously around the barn. Where was Charlie Welling? Had he left without him? Jack could not see him anywhere. The twins were now playing a sad tune on their fiddles, which brought a lump to Jack's throat. It was time to go home. A few of the guests still stood around in small groups. Why are they staring at me? Thought Jack as he walked towards the door. It felt stuffy and hot in the barn, and he wanted to be out in the open, breathing the fresh night air. Jack waved a drowsy farewell, half asleep, as he passed through the open doorway. He walked slowly and steadily until he reached a fork in the road on the outskirts of the village. As if in a dream, Jack remembered that one track went over the hills to Sindleford, and the other, the shorter route, went through the valley past Haggard's crossing. Jack's head felt heavy. He longed to rest it on his pillow in his warm, comfortable bed at home. The night ahead was dark and cold, and not a living thing was to be seen. He turned and looked at the barn in the distance. A warm yellow glow lit up the darkness. The muffled sound of singing and laughter floated gently into the night. Jack stood for a while in the stillness. Jack felt too fearful to take the shorter route past Haggard's crossing, so he set off upon the longer hill road. There was no moon in the sky, and his passage, a portion, was slow. After walking for some minutes, Jack began to trip over rocks in the road, and then all of a sudden a dark shape ahead of him blocked the road. Jack drew closer and found that it was a mound of loose earth. The road had completely disappeared. It took him a few moments to realize that there had been a landslide. Part of the road had fallen away. The earth and rocks from the hill above had tumbled onto the road. His way was blocked. Jack returned to the fork. He had no choice but to take the other road home. His body shook, but he was not sure whether it was from the cold or from fear. He swung the banjo off his shoulder and began to strum to play the guitar. As he went along. Somehow the sound felt comforting. Jack strummed louder and louder as he approached Haggard's crossing. The rippling river provided a background to his playing, and then he stopped in his tracks. Before him, at the point where the four roads crossed, he saw a dark figure. Although his strumming had stopped, the lapping waters Lapping, rap, and cover could still be heard, and the beat of Jack's heart hammered in his ears. Jack moved cautiously, carefully, his eyes fixed on the still figure ahead. The nearer he got, the louder his heart thumped against his aching ribs. His palms felt damp. Jack drew closer to the motionless figure in the darkness. He was but an arm's length away. Yet the figure had still not moved. Jack could now make out the form of a man. Jack's heart missed a beat. Was the man alive? Was this the ghost of the traveler who had been killed so long ago? Suddenly Jack no longer felt afraid. He too stood motionless, just like the man wearing clothes just like his own. A long dark coat, a scarf, a hat pulled low over his brow. There was a musty having a stale smell, about the man's clothes. It was too dark to see who the man was. Then the man spoke. Come, Jack, strum your banjo again. It is grim and lonely here. Grim, very serious. And your music brings warmth and comfort. I have waited so long for you to come this way. The people of the valley say that you can still hear Jack's banjo if you pass by Haggard's crossing on a dark night, and if you have a lantern, you may just make out two figures standing there. Exercises. Questions. 1. Why did the people not stop at Haggard's crossing? Answer. Locals believed that the restless spirit of a man who had been robbed and killed at Haggard's crossing roamed the valley. People avoided Haggard's crossing as they believed that the spirit caused many accidents from time to time. 2. What do you think Jack's father did for a living? Answer. Jack's father was a farmer and sold his vegetable to the city market. 3. Which examples in the story show us that Jack usually preferred avoiding Haggard's crossing? Answer. Jack always made sure that he got a lift back home on somebody's cart. 4. Why did Jack play his banjo on the way home? Answer. Jack was an excellent banjo player. He was in demand as he enlivened parties with his music. B. Reference to context. Read these lines from the story, then answer the questions. 1. The road is not safe and Sandalford is quite some way, said Jack. A. To whom is Jack speaking? Answer. Jack is speaking to Robinsons. B. Why is Jack speaking about Sandalford? Answer. Jack lives in the village of Sandalford, which is quite a distance down from the top of the valley at Burkham. C. What answer does Jack get to make him feel less fearful? Answer. Jack is reassured by the fact that Charlie Welling and his family from his village have also been invited to the same party, so they would give him a lift in their cart on the way back home. 2. I have waited so long for you to come this way. A. Who says these words and to whom? Answer. The spirit says the words to Jack. B. Where has the person been waiting? Answer. The spirit has been waiting at Haggard's crossing, where he had been killed since that time. C. Why has Jack come that way? Answer. Jack is compelled to go through Haggard's crossing from the party at Barkham because the Wellams who were to give him a lift by cart had already left. Also, he finds there has been a landslide on the other route to their village, so Jack is forced to take this route. C. Words and meanings. With the help of a dictionary, find out what these words mean. Use them in sentences. A. Soul. A moving spirit. May his soul rest in peace. B. Spirit. A supernatural being. The dead man's restless spirit roamed the valley. Ghost. Soul of a dead person. The ghost rose from the grave at night. D. Phantom. A form without reality, apparent to the senses, but with no substantial existence. The boy imagined that he saw the phantom of his dead father at his bedside at midnight. Goal, an evil being who robs graves and feeds on corpses. In the dark he looked like a ghoul. Poltergeist, a noisy, mischievous ghost. The poltergeist made sleeping in the house impossible. Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.